Sorry about that.
That's okay. Welcome to the VRA
Thank you.
live Discord. Thank you for agreeing to do such an amazing live stream for us in the morning. I can see you have a puppy next to you. Oh, two puppies. They're adorable.
Yeah.
Adorable.
Yeah, so my partner's meant to be taking care of them upstairs, but I think they've snuck through the security.
They're going to steal the show for sure. So that's adorable.
Yeah.
We love dogs here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, we hope you're doing all right. I can start with some of the questions if you like, and we will move on without any further ado. So,
sure. Yeah, go for it.
For the first question, we have, can you speak a little to the traditional digital art divide and how you navigate blending it so gracefully?
Yeah, I guess, to be honest, that's probably a couple of years worth of experimentation and, I guess, ideation. First and foremost, I would call myself a traditional illustrator. Basically, I'm just going to show you on screen now anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just show you here. I prepared some images here and there.
Amazing.
So I've been working across all kinds of disciplines over the last 10 years or so, from animation, illustration. I've worked for a few games here and there, and working digitally. I've always there's always been that problem of kind of abandoning my traditional skill sets. So working in 3D, for example, would often make me neglect some of my more traditional aspects. And I found that quite frustrating. It wasn't until discovering augmented reality and virtual reality maybe 3 or 4 years ago that it allowed me to kind of experiment a bit more and actually blend some of my traditional skill sets into immersive media. And that transition was quite seamless. So for about a year or so, I started tinkering with actually using my illustrations as textures, which sort of became the foundations for the aesthetic of my creations. So let me just see an example here. Sorry, let me know if I cut off, if I've...
Sure, absolutely.
You.
Loud and clear, and these illustrations are amazing. They're just outstanding, Marc. The line work and the detail and the thoughtfulness that's gone into this, they're just delightful.
Thank you. No, I'm glad you like them. I guess, compared to, painting on the computer, in my personal opinion, I've always preferred, working with analog mediums and trying to carry that medium across into the digital space is something I've always wanted to do. Just because I feel like, with that sort of analog style and aesthetic, it has that charm and quality that you don't normally get with a lot of 3D content. I think in some degree, obviously 3D content tends to look artificial because it is artificial.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine. That aesthetic is still really cool, but I've always appreciated that traditional aesthetic more, and I've always wanted to carry that across. So essentially, I started, studying, how older games were made, and essentially before using tablets, a lot of game developers would take photographs of textures from all walks of life. So, artists that made what are some examples? I'm trying to go back here. I guess Half-Life is a good example. Some of the textures they made were actually photographs, and they converted them into textures. And I kind of borrowed from those disciplines by turning my artworks into, I guess, modular textures. Yeah. So these modular textures are derived from, where are we? Let me just see here. Oh, sorry, I'm jumping the gun here. So they derive from my original illustration. So this example here, this is the original illustration that was created on paper, so with ink wash and gouache. And then, essentially gets cut up and spliced and turned into the texture that you just saw here. So you might recognize some various elements that have been sort of cut up from that previous image and turned into this texture. And then what happens is, I can even show you actually as a live demo, because I managed to to connect my phone up.
Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah, just oops, sorry, just bear with me. There we go. I've just connected my phone up here. It doesn't seem to want to play.
Oh, it's all right. Look, you get some like we said before. The cutting edge is often bleeding. So if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, well, we'll try something else until it works.
Yeah,
So
that's fine. I guess. Well, I mean, here, I can show you a video here. So
sure.
there we go. So that example you just saw then gets augmented reality treatment. So
Yeah.
I use a few different tool sets. So I use Unity 3D and Blender to create my augmented reality activations. Essentially turning those illustrated textures into 3D representations of themselves, bringing that into Unity, adding that augmented reality functionality, and then essentially allowing the work to come alive. So
Amazing. You know, the way you've used the textures and the loops, and you've really captured this beautiful sort of the energy of Melbourne in that work, and it's so unique.
no, cheers. Yeah, I guess it's essentially creating the work twice. So, but not in a time consuming way. So the benefit of working in this style is that, you know, once I've created the artwork, essentially my textures, essentially my art is already made up, right? So it's all a matter of just recreating a 3D model based on those textures. So I'm not repainting any new textures. I'm really just recycling and reusing what I've created. So I've actually found in this way it's been quite efficient. So when I work on commercial projects, you know, if I provide a proof of concept to a client, like an illustration, for example, I can already use that illustration as, you know, the base for 3D content. So it's been quite efficient so far to use.
Yeah, good. It's basically just changing the delivery of the artwork, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
clever you. It's excellent. Well, in terms of your commercial work and whatnot, we were wondering whether you studied art or IT or video games specifically at university, or were they things that you sort of taught yourself? Do you want to speak to a little bit what you enjoyed about your method of learning your amazing craft, or?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I think like most artists, I think we're self-taught to a certain degree. I studied a Bachelor of Animation and Interactive Media, and graduated around 2010. But
Mhm.
before then, I was teaching myself, like in high school, I was teaching myself, you know, illustration, you know, getting a bootleg copy of Flash
Yep.
back in the day and teaching myself 2D animation. And learning a bit of 3D on the side as well. So it was all sort of an accumulation of all these different skill sets, sort of taught at an early age. And from there, it's just sort of being built upon, you know, teaching myself different kinds of abilities to sort of create what I do today. So I guess augmented reality is really it's a multidisciplinary field where, you know, I've combined illustration, animation, 3D, and game development pipelines to sort of build these experiences here. So it's very I'm very much driven to sort of self-teach and experiment and tinker as much as possible. Because I mean, I'm not sure if you can see the examples here, but this was made maybe I think 2 or 3 years ago.
Sure.
You know, there weren't really many tutorials available out there, and what I found frustrating is there weren't many tutorials or forums where you could learn how to actually combine, you know, more traditional skill sets with immersive media. So it was really more of a journey of exploration, really. So
Yes, well, amazing, amazing, amazing. Yes, I think with again, cutting edge technologies, teaching yourself to a certain extent is almost par for the course. And but yeah,
absolutely.
like what you've done here with the blending of the textures and the recreating artworks in 3D, it really speaks to such a unique style. Now, since we know you taught yourself a lot about these things because it was pre-tutorial and pre-YouTube, all that stuff. maybe you can tell us a little bit about your favorite digital tools. Maybe list a couple of them and tell us about your journey with that favorite app or program or tool that you use.
Yeah, sure. Gosh, there's actually quite a mixed bag of tools that I use and enjoy. I guess to narrow it down, I would have to say Blender has been something I've sort of come to enjoy over the last 2 years as my central, I guess, as my central unit of operations. I use Blender from anything from motion graphics to 3D animation and modeling. But prior to that, so I mean, in tandem with Blender, I use a mix of different tools like Unity and Unreal Engine to build the functionality in my content.
Yeah.
For modeling, I guess it's a mixed bag. So I'll just for the fear of crashing while streaming, I thought I'd just record my progress here.
Sure.
I've used Gravity Sketch over the last year and a half or so, primarily to create the foundations of my models. So because you can create NURB surfaces, but you can also create subdivided geometry as well, which is fantastic for game development. If you want to optimize your content, it's much more efficient, I personally find, than using Tilt Brush or Quill, just because I can take this content into a tool like Blender and further optimize it, clean the geometry, make sure that the poly count is low enough for AR content, and I'll be on my way. Whereas when I've worked with, Quill and Tilt Brush are amazing. Like I love, they're fantastic. But I guess there's always that issue of when you export that content out from those tools, you run into issues with high poly count, having to clean that geometry, and when you have to clean that geometry and decimate it, it kind of I guess it depends how well you do it. It affects the final look of that content when you export it into different platforms. So say, for example, if I paint something in Tilt Brush and it's really beautiful, highly detailed, but then when I want to make an AR experience out of it, I will need to optimize it heavily to make sure it runs on mobile devices. Whereas Tilt Brush, whereas Gravity Sketch, what's really great about that is that I'm working with basic building blocks, basic geometry. So it's essentially using the same principles of existing 3D applications. So it works quite well. It's quite friendly with that. So there isn't a great requirement to clean up the geometry because the geometry is already it's subdivided geometry. So I don't need to in this instance, so in this example here, I'm not using NURB surfaces at all, because with NURBs, when you bring that in, you still need to clean that up. You need to sometimes clean up the edge flows and optimize that again. But in this instance here, I'm using just basic meshes, so just blocks and cylinders and really primitive shapes to sort of bring out my to sort of bring my creations to life. And then from there, what I do is I can export these out as a collection and then integrate them into Unity. Sorry, I know that was an octopus.
Yes.
This is a crab.
This is a crab.
But essentially, essentially, it's the process is bringing it all into Blender and then applying I'll just drag this out here like so. So based on the image you saw before, creating my illustrations and turning them into texture maps. As you can see here, I've done the same process where it's all laid out in a modular format. And then this sort of becomes almost like my palette for me to sort of texture my sculptures like so. So I'm not repainting anything. I'm really just reusing what's been created on paper.
Yeah. Wow.
And then from there, once all of this is animated and once this is all animated, so it might be a bit laggy, excuse the internet connection, but once this is all animated in Blender, I'll go into Unity 3D where I'll build the functionality and I guess put everything together and then deploy it as an app to test for an augmented reality experience.
Amazing.
So,
yeah, no, that's such an intricate and clever way of using those programs together. It's very, very impressive. I was wondering whether you could speak on what you're looking forward to in terms of expanding possibilities with VR, AR, and mixed reality technologies. What excites you about the future in terms of being able to present your art that way?
Yeah, I guess it's really interesting, isn't it? And things are just becoming so blurred. I mean, game engine technology, I mean, game development pipelines are being integrated into all kinds of industries these days. Like even film. If you've watched The Mandalorian, um, I mean, there's several other films as well, but Mandalorian is an interesting example. Virtual production is going to be huge. It's already taking off, but it's going to be much bigger. I think that's something I'm really excited about. Being able to um, essentially work in virtual reality, create content in virtual reality, and even direct and produce in VR. So this whole idea of not having to be constantly at your computer all the time to create content, but actually working entirely in a virtual environment, I think that's something really promising to look forward to. Right now, I guess I'm sort of going off on a tangent here,
No, no, that's
but
okay.
yeah, I guess at this point in time, the technology that we have, I wouldn't say it's. Yeah, I guess we have a long way to go in terms of creating photorealistic content for virtual reality devices. But I guess, um, yeah, I guess essentially what I'm really looking forward to is, I guess, delving more into virtual production, especially with Unreal Engine, being able to uh, not have to pre-render content anymore, but actually jump into these photorealistic sets and scenes without having to rely on, rendering content frame by frame, but actually seeing it real time. So real time graphics is definitely going to be a big player in the future. So um,
Yes, I know many of us have
I
been
guess
keeping our eyes out for that Unreal Engine update that's coming soon. Has it already happened, or it's happening at the end of this year, isn't it?
uh, Unreal Engine 5. Yeah, I believe
Yeah,
that's set to come out next year. Yeah,
yeah,
I think in late 2021. But
soon.
Unreal Engine 4.25. That's currently what I use at the moment. I mean, the capabilities within that engine alone at the moment are fantastic. I mean, the level of quality and rendering quality you can get alone with a standard GPU is phenomenal. So when you pair that with VR, so for example, if I put on my VR headset and jump into Unreal Engine, I can see that entire environment before my eyes with global illumination, ambient occlusion, all these high quality post processing effects within the engine itself. So you can already see the final outputs of your content. So that's something that still boggles my mind too. Because if you go back years ago, you would have to you'd have to run that through different render passes in order
Yeah.
to see the final product. But now you can see it, just like that, just thanks to using game engine technology. So
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, what have your experiences been like marketing or selling your art in traditional fine art and commercial art markets? And maybe you can contrast and compare that with what your experiences have been like in the crypto art space or digital art markets.
yeah, my gosh, I'd have to say, look, I don't have. I guess I've had a few issues here and there with working with the physical gallery space. So and I'm sure some artists would agree that working with curators and working with reputable gallery spaces, you run into a lot of barriers. So I mean, firstly, there's the cost of hiring the space,
Yeah.
and then there's dealing with the high commissions that curators generally take from artists, and that can be frustrating alone too. Because I mean, if you do happen to make a sale from that, like um, yeah, if you happen to make a sale, like how do you sort of make up for what you've lost in terms of setting up the having to pay for all that gallery space
Yeah.
and then having to um, deal with the other fees there too. So I found that selling work in the traditional gallery space has been quite frustrating over the last few years. I've worked with some curators where the commissions weren't too high. And you get some good audience reach with that. But to be honest, I found after diving into crypto art over the last couple of months, I think I've found not just my audience reach to be much greater, but I guess the amount of attention garnered from collectors from an international audience has been much more attractive and appealing than the traditional sense of a gallery. So over the last couple of years, I've been showcasing my augmented reality work. So I'm just whipping up a video here too. So I've showcased at various spaces. So I've showcased, at Adobe Symposium, South by Southwest, San Francisco's Game Developers Conference. And while that's great, there's still that limitation in audience reach. So you're only going to reach that audience that are attending. Whereas crypto art, you can showcase that work virtually, and you can reach just about anyone in the world. So I guess in terms of where I'm heading in the future, I think I would be more focused in showcasing art in virtual galleries, virtual spaces, as opposed to the traditional art. And I think when lockdown ends, I think it's going to take a lot of time for galleries and businesses to open up again, and to get that sort of attention. But seeing the way artists are now utilizing the virtual space, I don't think they're going to see traditional galleries in the same, I guess, way again.
I agree.
Does that make sense?
I agree. I think art fairs and live events and performances and everything will have to be reimagined, not just for cost, but also because people have now discovered the possibilities of the internet and online connection. So that this time in lockdown has, it will ultimately change the way we consume, sell, make, and distribute art. I agree.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess I'm not trying to, downplay, the art community, but I guess I've had my own frustrations with even Melbourne's art community. I find there's a degree of elitism there. There are certain elite art circles out there that I just can't I can't bother dealing with. And there was a point where I wanted to be part of that community. I wanted to showcase at these Melbourne art fairs here and there, but at the same time, you need to work really hard to build those reputations. It's not just about the art, but also people which I found quite, I guess, sort of demotivating and depressing. The fact that you have to know these sort of people to even add some value and worth to your work. So with the crypto art space and showcasing virtually, it in a decentralized space, it's up to the audiences to determine what they like and don't like and what's popular and what's not. So it kind of eliminates those barriers of entry for emerging artists, especially too.
Yeah.
Which is why I guess I think left, right, and center every time I mention, I guess, any progress I've had in crypto art. A lot of artists are very curious about how do you set up yourself, how do you get started. So I think it's a really exciting movement to sort of get the ball rolling.
Absolutely, yeah, no, it's intriguing on a lot of levels, the crypto art stuff. Maybe you can tell us if there's any platforms in particular that you find inspiring or compelling, if they're crypto art or VR galleries, social VR, AR apps that you are sort of like, that you might look at exhibiting in the future, or that make you excited to distribute your work on those platforms in particular?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, I've been working a lot with Super Rare, which you might have heard of before. I'm not sure if the audience might have heard of Super Rare. Just trying to gauge whether or not they might have.
I know there's a few from our regular crew, and there's a few new names in here as well. Welcome and thank you for joining us. But I'm just checking the general text response now to see how many. If there's anybody saying I have no idea what Super Rare is. If you don't, just raise your hand if you want to. But,
yeah, sure. Well, I guess, just to basically explain it, Super Rare is a crypto art marketplace and it's one of several crypto art marketplaces, but it's one of the more exclusive and well known types out there. And essentially, artists submit digital content or digital artworks, whether it be 2D, 3D, animated videos or GIFs. They can essentially authenticate and tokenize their works on the Ethereum blockchain, and essentially sell their digital work to collectors all around the world. And I found that quite exciting because it actually it adds value and brings value to digital art the same way that we may appreciate physical artworks. What I've been delving more into is virtual galleries, so being able to showcase that art in a virtual space where audiences and collectors can actually see the work in 3D, and I think that's something quite exciting for crypto art. So I would have to say Super Rare has been is a platform I've been really excited about, just because of how far they've been trying to push the boundaries with this kind of space. Another space I'm really excited about is Decentraland. If some people haven't heard of that, so that's a kind of a metaverse space, almost similar to Second Life. If anyone's played that before, have you played Second Life before, Reversebutcher?
I have not, but I'm aware of what it is and how it works. I think,
Okay.
yeah. I'm aware
Yeah.
of Decentraland. I think there's a fair few of us here that might know that about that place. But in terms of your engagement with it, we'd love to hear more about what you've been doing in there.
Yeah, sure. So I guess it's been similar to what's been happening with Super Rare in that they have their own virtual galleries. Decentraland is essentially this massive metaverse of a world where people can purchase land, they can set up shops, they can set up galleries, and it's really up to whatever you want to do, really. So what I've been exploring is developing sculptures, like taking on commissions for sculptures. And creating these sculptures for various spaces that might need some decorations in their environments.
Amazing.
So right now, I've been working on a few sculptures for certain plazas and areas around Decentraland, which I still need to release. They're still in development.
Sure.
But I guess that's one of several things you can do within Decentraland. You can showcase art, you can sell art, you can even produce wearables. So you can create wearable assets, 3D assets, 3D accessories that you can build and even sell and distribute across Decentraland. So it's. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like what the Oasis from Ready Player One, but I guess it's got that similar kind of ideology in that it's sort of an open world for anyone to explore and do anything. But what's really cool, it's built on blockchain, so you can conduct transactions on Decentraland. You can purchase land, you can rent land, you can turn that into real currency, real money. So
Yeah.
and it's only going to improve. I think as our technology will improve, so will the graphical quality of that space will improve as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. I know that in the general text response here, we've got several of the VRA Live members that have been working on their own virtual galleries in a program called Neos, and many of them have been working on them for 12 months or more. So it's exciting to hear that there are all of these options in terms of platforms and stuff. I think we'll definitely have to take a trip to Decentraland at some point and check out your work and everybody else's work.
I can't say I've heard of Neos. I'd love to learn more about.
Yeah. Well, I'll send you some information after if you like. But yeah, it's it's another world building program similar to something like VRChat or probably Decentraland. But it's you can actually build the spaces in a VR setting. So you don't necessarily need to have Blender or something like that, although you can plug anything you want into it. So it's you can do everything from within a headset, I guess.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So I guess it eliminates a lot of barriers then, if you're not necessarily a programmer. Then
yeah. I think if you don't have that programming skill, Neos can be a really good option. And if you do have that programming skill, you can just augment everything you do in there even further because it's very open in terms of.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So it's another little little app that people can use. And I'm sure that if you ever wanted to, there'd be people here that could show you what they've got in there. But your amazing artworks are always full of these tiny details and moving parts. They seem to have like almost sentient machines in and of themselves. They have these little looped narratives to them. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your process for developing those sort of complex works and narratives inside your artworks.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked that question. I guess I'm trying to figure out where to start here with that. I guess when I create, actually maybe I'll quickly whip up a 3D scene for you just to show you the level of detail that goes within it.
Thank you.
Give me a moment.
Of course.
That's all right.
Of course.
Am I lagging significantly? Is that okay?
No, you're good.
Can you see that?
I can see it.
That's all good.
There's no complaints on our board either, so we got it.
Okay, great. Just let me know if I lag, because Australian internet, as I'm sure you're aware, is horrible. It's the worst in the world.
So slow.
Yeah.
No, it's still fine for now.
So essentially, I guess when I create an artwork, I love stories. I love telling stories, and I think when I create an artwork, I try to create some sort of story within it. So that's why I love detail. I like to populate the work with as much detail as possible, so that there's always something new and different to look at within the piece. And depending on what you look at, there's always there's a narrative. There's some sort of story that happens with each character. What's happening over here. Maybe that's a bit laggy. This might be a bit better. This was a recent crypto artwork. But essentially, with all the artworks I create, it's not just something pretty to look at. There's always some sort of story and narrative that I want to try and get in there. Even if there's no dialogue, even if there's no voices, I try to animate some sort of narrative within the piece. Coming from illustration, I think my personal frustration with illustration and static art is, it's static. There's always that urgency. I've always had that urgency to bring it to life and really flesh it out into an actual story world, which is why animation and VR and AR made sense to sort of take it that next step further. So I think... So even working in virtual reality too, I personally feel frustrated when I go into a sculpture, when I go into a work and it's static, it doesn't move. There's nothing there. It feels empty and cold. So yeah, movement for me, motion and detail for me is so important to immerse the audience in. So I hope that makes sense. I'm just rambling here. No. Just the ability to bring a world to life and to fully explore it is quite magical and special for me, which is why, if I'm making works of this detail, it needs to move, it needs to be animated. Otherwise, I just kind of lose interest in it.
Sure.
So
sure. Maybe there's some way you could share a link to this artwork where it's up on Super Rare or where it's sold or where it's gone in the end, just because that one there was lagging for some of our users, and there's so much intricate detail in this. I'd love for them to be able to see it. After this, maybe I can get a link to where that's up, so I can share that with the group. But some of us can see it and I think some of us can't. But it's just, so delightful, and I love the way that you have those little whimsical loops. There's a sense of sort of real mastercraft and humor in what you produce, which is just outstanding. But I
guess. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry.
No. You go. Sorry, go. It's really go. You could...
Well, I was just going to say. I guess with these works, I'm not sure if some people might know the name. So I grew up a lot. Watching a lot of, and it probably wasn't really appropriate at my age. I was watching a lot of Monty Pythons with my dad, and a lot of Terry Gilliam's animations, like a lot of his cutout animations. I think they've been a huge inspiration to my work, because I mean he's with vastly detailed and cut out, and I think he essentially created these loops as well during Monty Python. So I think a lot of his work I take a lot of inspiration from his stuff too, just like the the way he constructs his scenes, although he uses illustrations and photographs, the way he constructs these scenes and puts everything together, I think, I draw a lot of inspiration from that kind of era of animation, I suppose. So if anyone was curious as to what kind of inspiration sort of drive these, so.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see now that you've mentioned it, you can definitely sort of see the lineage to something like Terry Gilliam and his stop motion work. And actually, we did have a question here about your inspiration, so that's lovely. It's almost sort of organically deemed into it. There's a couple of people typing questions now. So, was there any other, apart from Terry Gilliam, were there any early animators that really inspired you to sort of get into the medium, or?
Yeah, I guess again, I grew up a lot with Tim Burton's work. I think one of the very first animations I ever saw was Nightmare Before Christmas, and that absolutely blew me away. I think some of my earlier works, if you go back through some of my earlier artworks, there's a lot of similarities there, but I guess it's sort of changed. I guess another artist that comes to mind is Sean Tan.
Yes.
Some people might not be aware of, but he's one of my all-time favorite storytellers and illustrators. His works are so surreal. He creates these beautiful imaginary worlds that I've never really seen before. They're quite, I guess it's almost borderline what Magritte or Dali, just the surrealistic creations that he's made.
Yes.
And I guess that sort of fuels into my inspiration for having that need to create to build from your imagination. So not necessarily referencing things from real life, but I guess building from things from your own minds. So stuff like that is really, really inspiring for my work. So
Absolutely, yes. And Sean Tan's work is astounding. I actually found his books before his animations, and it's delightful to watch how he's done his like what you're doing. He started off with traditional art and moved on to using that art as a basis for delivering complex animations and narratives and things. We do have a question from Grrlrighter here, who's asked, what program is Marc using for his real-time avatar? Everybody loves your avatar, by the way. Everybody loves it. They're like, what is that? Amazing.
I'm glad you like it. So essentially I'm using Lens. I'm using Snap Camera. So I work with and I should have covered it earlier. So I do AR content in Unity, but I also use other platforms too. So there's Spark AR, which is Facebook and Instagram's augmented reality platform, and there's also Lens Studio, which is Snapchat's platform for augmented reality creation. So these are free apps to use, and you can essentially create your own augmented reality experiences on there. And using there's a separate add-on called Snap Camera, which allows you to directly use your augmented reality filters that you create onto your PC. So you can use, if you use Streamlabs for streaming, you can pair that with Snap Camera, access your filter, and use that as your own head filter. Let me know if I'm rambling, but essentially,
so clever. We're all listening.
The way I created this, the way I created this piece is again illustration, turned it into 3D, and then I used Lens Studio to build the AR functionality behind this work. So I use blend shapes to I use different blend shapes to create different states of my face. So if my face is open, or if my eyes are closed, or if my eyebrows go up, there are different states for those things. I build all that functionality in Lens Studio, and then I grab once I publish that filter, I can then use that with Snap Camera, and then integrate that with Streamlabs, which then produces this result. So,
gosh, clever you. And Grrlrighter says, "Thank you very much. It looks fantastic." We have a question.
No worries, anytime.
We have a question from Sabby as well, who's asked whether you can share exactly how to get Blender to decimate gravity sketch imports. She says it never seems to work for her. Maybe it has to be an FBX export rather than an OBJ. Any advice?
Oh, okay. I export as an OBJ. I'll just go back to my crab.
Sure. If you want to, tell us. on that project, that would be delightful. It's that's amazing. That crab, by the way, it's so intricate. Oh,
Thank you. Actually, sorry, that's the octopus. My bad.
that's okay. Also good.
Crab octopus. Yeah. So, sorry, I'm just from here. Here we go. Sorry, I'll just come here
Sure.
to this.
We're just mesmerized by the helicopter going around your head, so don't worry about it. Don't mind us. We're just gonna stare at, at your face, you know.
I keep telling myself I should have removed it because it's quite distracting, especially for meetings and talks. So,
do you have meetings with that on? That's wonderful. I love it. I love the internet.
Sometimes I'll have a meeting and then I'll have another meeting where I should be formal and more professional, and sometimes I forget to turn it off. So then 5 minutes into the meeting, I realize I still have that filter on, and people don't tell me. So,
oh god.
But yeah, I guess when it comes to decimating geometry, so I essentially use Blender's Decimate tool. You can also do it as a modifier as well to decimate the geometry. It does produce. I mean, depending on the geometry, sometimes it can create unwanted triangles, which means you just need to quadrangulate parts of it. So, for example, if I just decimate this here.
We're still looking at your face and not your screen. So if you're trying to show us something,
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Okay. I'm going to switch. So I just realized. Okay. Here we go. I'm just back here. Here we go. So I'm back into the crab here. So this is the crab I've created. So say, for example, this. Actually, I'll go to the leg. The leg's probably an easier thing to look at. So the leg. So right now it's currently made of 380 triangles, 200 faces, which is fine. This entire creature is fine for AR and VR. I think it's about. I think it's less than 40,000 triangles.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
But essentially, and that's the beauty of working with subdivided geometry instead of NURBS, is that you're already working with low poly meshes, so you don't really have to deal with a lot of decimating. But if you have geometry that is high in poly count, you can decimate that geometry in Blender. So for example, and I'll show you again, I'm not sure if you can see it properly, but I go to Mesh, Clean Up, and Decimate Geometry.
Yeah.
The other option here is you can even go to, you can add it as a modifier as well. Yeah, so I mean, you can either do it in a destructive or non-destructive way, so that's up to you. For me personally, I'm pretty confident with what I want, so I'll just go and I'll use the other tool instead of the modifier. But in this example here, if you use the decimate modifier, you can reduce the geometry significantly by scaling the ratio up and down. And obviously this looks terrible.
Yeah.
I'll just do the other example here too, so you can actually see it. So as I'm going back and forth, I'll just turn wireframe on here too for you.
Sure.
Wireframe. Yeah, it's a bit hard to see with that surface. There we go. I think that makes sense.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I'm just trying to... yeah, so if you can see that already, what I'll do is I'm going to... I'll go to Mesh, Clean Up, Decimate Geometry, and essentially I can drag that and it reduces the... the poly count, so. But then there is... You still need to clean up a few things. So, for example, I don't necessarily want this triangle here. I don't need these two triangles. So sometimes I'll manually go in and just sort of merge vertices together just to clean that up.
Sure.
So it's really a process of just going in there, dissolving edges here and there, and just sort of cleaning it up so it's more quadrangulated.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you are using Unity or Unreal Engine, it automatically triangulates it. So that that's essentially what it looks like when it goes into the engine.
Yeah.
But in these 3D tools, that means that you can't do edge loops anymore. So ideally, you want to quadrangulate it. You want to make it. Where's the quadrangulate tool here? Sorry, I'm just messed that up. Tries to quads, that's the one. Oh. Yeah, so essentially what I do is I decimate the geometry, and then I go in there a bit deeper and just sort of clean up certain vertices that aren't really necessary, and that reduces the poly count even further. So
amazing. That's very intricate work. We have a couple.
So even with, oh, sorry.
No, please keep going if you haven't finished the answer. I was saying we've got more questions.
Oh yeah, no problem. I think even with I think even with like these legs, to be honest, like I could even reduce them further, because I mean some of these edges aren't overly necessary. So I could essentially dissolve these edges like so. So say you've got, if I select right click and select dissolve edges, then it reduces the faces across all these here.
Oh,
so,
wow. Very clever.
So there's lots of little tips and tricks you can do to reduce the poly count. Ideally, less is better for VR and AR content. It just makes sense from a performance standpoint. So again, that's why I prefer Gravity Sketch as opposed to Tilt Brush and Quill, because I have more control of. I can manage my topology, my geometry better in Gravity than in those others.
Yeah, it definitely looks like a really efficient program for sure. Have we lost you, Marc? I think we've lost Marc. There were more questions, but oh no, Marc's joined us again. You dropped out for a moment, Marc, but if we'll just hang five for a second.
Sorry, can I lose you there? I just lost there for a second.
Just for a second, but it's all right. You're back now.
For a second.
If you've got time for another couple of questions, we've got another couple of little questions.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Sure.
Thank you. So Disgruntled Beast has asked, can you please ask proportionally how much time his traditional part of the process versus the digital part takes? So do you spend more time on one process than the other in terms of traditional and digital, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, I guess so I would say there's more time involved in the 3D processes. So I'd say the modeling, the animation, the rigging, all of that I would say is the most time consuming. So for example here, this character is even rigged as well. I'll just show you real quickly. I'll just show you the bones. Rigging is a very time-consuming process, because you need to ensure that the various parts of your character react accordingly to the rig that you've built. So I don't know if you can see this. I'll go slowly. Can you see that character moving?
Yes.
So I would say 25% would go to the illustration work. So the illustration is actually really easy to produce, and for me, I'm a really quick illustrator. I can draw up things really fast, and then so here's the texture map that I essentially use and reference. There's actually four different texture atlases I use, so you can see them all here. So you can see all the level of detail that goes into them, and depending on the model, they'll use different parts of this texture. So what I do is I illustrate it, I scan it in, and then I cut it up and splice it into Photoshop, and then I will turn that into maybe a 2K or a 4K texture, which then gets spit out into a texture atlas. And then I guess another 25%. I guess let's just bunch it with 75%. The rest is modeling, texturing, rigging, and then animating the creature. So majority of my time is spent doing the more technical parts of a creation. So
okay, well, thank you very much. Grrlrighter has one other last question, I reckon. Does Marc conceptualize his work in 2D, 3D, or does it depend on the piece?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So in terms of, do I illustrate it on paper first, or?
Well, when you're thinking of a piece, do you start in 2D, or do you start in 3D, or do you picture it as both, or does it depend on the piece, I think? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think it largely depends on the piece. So just going back to one of the sketches. There we go. Just go back to that. Actually, no, wrong one.
I love the cat. The cat was amazing. Oh my god.
Thanks. That's an AR work as well.
Amazing.
So I'll go back to where we go. So with this work here, I guess with all my work, it's all done on paper first. So everything is illustrated on paper, and I guess from there, I try to strategize and think about how I cut it up and splice it up. So when I finish this illustration, I then need to consider, okay, how am I going to modularize this? And by the way, this is just one of several different drawings that goes into a work. So there's actually more than one drawing that goes into an AR activation, because you've got this layer, which is the initial look of the work, but then you've got hidden layers that other people don't see until the artwork comes to life. So for example, here, when I go behind the artwork, you see other buildings that you don't see in the original piece. So everything is essentially illustrated first. It's all on paper first. And then from there, I try and strategize and try to think about, how do I splice up this piece into a modular texture? So I might cut up various faces and then flatten them out to look like, to essentially look like this atlas here. So I guess in short, it all starts off with the illustration, and then it gets spliced up and cut up, and I sort of plan it from there. So I try to work it from eye. So the models are based off the original illustrations. If that answers your question.
I reckon it does. That's an amazing process, and we're all very grateful that you have taken the time this Saturday morning for us Melbourne people. So thank you for spending your Saturday morning with us. I don't think there are any more pressing questions, but I did want to just ask you if there was anything coming up for you in terms of exhibitions or shows or projects where we could come and visit or support you in some way. So what have you got on the very near horizon, Marc?
Yeah, for sure. I think some of you might have seen the video on Twitter or other social media platforms, but essentially, Super Rare will be having their next virtual reality exhibition coming up soon. I believe it's on the 28th of August.
That is exciting.
Yeah, so that's next week.
Great.
Beg pardon, sorry?
That's exciting.
Oh, yes.
Great.
Yeah, that's very exciting. So it's got a series of artists. You might be familiar with a few other artists in the lineup. So you've got VR Rosie, so she's from the UK, amazing artist. Meta Geist, another VR artist. These are all VR AR artists that are essentially creating, these VR sculptures. And I'm currently working with Matt, who's another artist who's working with Super Rare to build this virtual gallery. So this theme is Atlantis. It'll be available in VR chat, so you're free to explore it in with a VR headset or on your desktop. So it's fully accessible. So you can walk around. Artists will be answering questions about how they create their works. It's a fully explorable underwater themed world. All these artworks will be on display, and I think some of them can be jumped on and interacted with. So that's a really exciting upcoming project that's in development and will be ready next week. So if you have time next week, feel free to come by and check it out. We'll have links and I guess other promotional material for you to sort of follow and jump into.
Wonderful. So we will all be there. I think there were quite a few of us from this Discord that came to the exhibition that you did last time with Super Rare. So there were two of your works in that one there, which definitely boosted our awareness of your work. And we will definitely come to that one and share all of the promotional material. So look, thank you again for coming and giving such a delightful and informative talk about your process. It's been just lovely. Thank you very much. If you want to leave your Twitter handle or anything that, like, your socials, your website, whatever, maybe just in the general text response channel, so that if there's anybody here who doesn't follow you already, that they can go and do that. and keep up to date with what you're working on.
Yeah, for sure.
Please
Thanks
and
so
thank
much
you.
again for having me. It's been a real pleasure. It's I was a bit nervous at first, but yeah, I think the nerves sort of calmed down. It's really really great to share this stuff with the community. So thanks again.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a delight to listen and learn from you. Okay. Well, you have a good morning, and signing off. Stay in touch.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.